break. All right, so we're going to do a quick test. Most of you are marketers, some of you aren't. Where's my extroverts? Where's my extroverts? Raise your hands. Introverts, whatever, right? Okay, thank you. My name's Chris, as you just heard. I'm happy to be here and happy to be with all you today. We're going to spend the next 45 or 50 minutes trying to do about 3 hours worth of content, so brace yourselves. I grew up in Trenton, New Jersey. Any East Coasters in the house? All right, so the part of this presentation that is bold, blunt, fast, high-paced, that's that part. I spent 15 years in San Diego. Any Southern California folks or West Coast people in the house? A couple more, all right. So the part that is cool and trendy and hip, like this suit, is the Southern California influence. And I went to Colorado for 2 years on sabbatical. Anyone from the Rocky Mountains or middle of the country? All right, so the part that's grounded, that comes from there. I lived in Costa Rica for 2 months, so the part that's outside the box goes from there, and now I reside in Scottsdale. So the casual sophistication that you're about to witness is from Arizona. Okay? Very good. Anyone from a foreign country? Where are you from? Russia. Anyone else? No. All right, well, good. Ma, I see a hand back there. Where are you from? Jamaica. Welcome. The islands. That's awesome. All right, so we're all in the business of trying to create a customer experience, but how many of you have felt, let's see where the slides go. There they are. All right, I'm getting familiar here. So how many of you feel a little bit confused, if you're honest, about what customer experience means? Or maybe you're clear, but your team is confused. Thank you. Okay, so what I promise you today is I'm not going to answer the question, right? There is no answer to your challenge that I can give you that's going to uniformly work for all of you. But I will promise you this. If you pay attention, I'll do my very best to run through a framework we've built. We wrote about it in the recent book, Digital Sense. We do these kind of things. This is my 6th time to Vegas since January, which I feel like I should move here. But what we're doing right now is we're trying to help organizations find your answer. So if you spend the next 50 minutes and you invest your time with me, I'll do my best to make it as personal as possible. If we get time for questions at the end, we'll do that, and if not, you can find me at the breaks or whatever, and I'll hang around. But the goal of this presentation is to help you find your answer as it relates to customer experience. The reality today is, how many of you feel like you're in a race? A little bit. So I'll tell you a funny story. I was here 3 weeks ago at an Oracle event. I was with one of my business partners, Josh, and the East Coast in me and also the entrepreneur in me walks fast, talks fast, does that. So if anybody's like me and you're in one of these big expanses, this one was at Mandalay Bay, not Cosmo, we had to get somewhere, right? And I don't remember what it was, and we're just walking between like meetings or something, and I walk like that, and Josh is walking with me, right? And he's like 5'8", but he walks faster than me. So he and I are just literally boom, 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 and I said, dude, where are we going? He goes, I don't know, but we're getting there. And I almost fell down laughing. And I think about today, when we talk about customer experience, we talk about marketing, I think that's kind of apropos. I think a lot of times we're being forced to figure out what to do with our budgets. We're trying to pick which marketing tech stack to implement and what legacy system we got to do and what our social media policy is going to be. And we're moving really fast, but we don't really know where we're going. Anyone feel that way? Good. So this is the reality. How many of you have heard of a gentleman named Gerd Leonhard? I would write that name down. He's a friend of mine. I actually hired him to speak at an event I produced several years ago in the startup community. We got to know each other, and he wrote a book recently called Technology versus Humanity, and this is his chart. It's called Combinatorial Futures, and what you're looking at basically is a new economic paradigm messed with technology foundation, future scenarios, and innovation accelerators, kind of all mapped together, right? So the one that you've probably heard the most about in your space is blockchain and things like that. But at the end of the day, AI and all these different things that are now present are all kind of taking us into this direction of exponential possibilities. But what we do is we live in a world today where good enough is no longer good enough. But we're also living in a world where we can't keep up with the complexity that we've manufactured in our lives or in our businesses. And so we're dealing with organizational overwhelm. We're dealing with personal overwhelm. We're trying to figure out how not to make the wrong decision, but our boss or our board, because it happens at every level of the organization. You know, the CIO gets a message that says from the board, I just heard about XYZ, they got hacked, I don't want to be hacked. CEO goes to the CTO, says, I don't want to get hacked. CTO goes to his team and goes, what are we going to do? We're not going to get hacked, right? And it just goes down the line. And so this idea that we're in an exponential time is foreign to us. How many of you know the exercise about a penny doubled every 30 days? You're all bankers. You should know this one. So there's a really rare penny that I happen to have in my possession. I'm not going to show it to you because I don't want you to see it. But it's worth about $1.7 million. There's only 4 of them in the whole world remaining. If I was to, what's your name? You're giving me good energy. What's your name? Becky. Okay, I have this penny in this pocket, okay? It's right here. It's $1.7 million, give or take who you trade it to on eBay. I'll give you that, or a penny doubled for the next 31 days, because we're in a 31-day month. What would you take now? Guess.
$1.7 million.
Okay, she just lost about $8 million. Now, why does that happen to us? Because what did she do in her head? What did all you do in your head? This isn't a Becky issue. What's 1 penny worth? So if it doubles tomorrow, what's it worth? What's it worth the next day doubled? 4, 8, 16 cents. At like day 15, it's still only worth like $8. So what our brains do as a human is we go, 8, 16, 32, 64. 1.7 sounds real good. At day 27, it hits 844,000. How's day 28 looking? Day 29 is 3.2. Day 30 is, so what happens is you lose money. That's compounding, the eighth wonder of the world, as Einstein said, compound interest. But the problem is that's the world we live in today. Gerd said in 20 years from today, so 2037, most of us hopefully will still be alive. Most of us, if we have children, they will be somewhere in the college age or they will be, in the working world 20 years from now. It's not that far out. 20 years from now, we will see more change than the last 300 combined. So you've all read books about George Washington, right? First president. Think about 1717. Imagine we all lived there. First of all, we wouldn't be sitting in this building, would we? If we were in this state in 1717, there would be nothing but dirt and sand. And we would be wearing like one outfit. There would be a hole in the ground called a potty. There would be no shower. And then imagine you got dropped the next day into this conference where in real time, most of you are tweeting or taking a picture or sending an email while you're listening to me on screen if you can't see me around the pillar. And you go, what would you do? You go outside, there's an abundance of food. There's $5 coffee. Right? That tastes just as muddy as the stuff in 1717. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not knocking the coffee. So you'd be overwhelmed, wouldn't you? Okay, think everything that you know right now. This is the scary part of the presentation. Everything you know about your life right now, even the stuff you don't understand, but that you can manage your way through a 24/7 cycle, 20 years from now, you will feel like that pre-colonial person. In 20 years. Like, that's mind-boggling, right? So here's the good news. The bad news is you can't stop that. The good news is human beings are pretty simple. We think in pictures, yes or no? All right, who wants to play along with me this time? Yuri, because you're sitting in the front row. Don't ever sit in the front row. No. Yuri, do you have a refrigerator? You do. I want you to think about your refrigerator. What do you see right now?
You mean outside, inside?
It doesn't matter. What color is it?
Black.
It's black. How many of you, when I'm asking him these questions, see your refrigerator? Raise your hand. How many of you don't have a black one? What do you see? Stainless steel, wood grain, white. You see your refrigerator, yes? Okay, Yuri, is it clean or empty? Or it's clean or dirty?
It's clean.
It's clean. Is it full or is it empty? Am I asking you that question? Are you seeing your refrigerator in its present state? Oh my God, it's dirty when I get home. That's one thing I'm going to have to do. How many of you, but it's clear, yes? Okay, if I told you, think of your car, Yuri. How many of you, I want all of you, think of your car. What color is it? Black. Interior is leather or cloth or what? Leather. Black leather? Black leather. Okay. How many of you can see my car? Is it German? We might get you a date tonight. No, I'm just kidding. How many of you want to know what my car looks like or can see my car clearly in your head? None, right? Partly because I don't own one. I ride a bike and an Uber. But if I had a car, it would be very hard to find it, right? If I said your job to get your butt home or to McCarran Airport is to go get my car out of this garage, how you doing? That's your organization when you say customer experience. You go, God, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a great customer experience. And Yuri sees customer service. And Becky sees call center. And Chris sees a great website. Does that make sense? So we think in pictures, and we have to get common pictures. So I showed you the guy from Breaking Bad from that show just because I try and pretend like I look like a celebrity. I never lived in New Mexico. I have been there. But 12 steps to Breaking Bad. One is get real quick. We are powerless today over always-on marketing. Credit unions, financial institutions, banks, retailers, no one has enough, there's not enough time in the day to keep up with the amount of change. So the good news is it's a level playing field that way. So if you're overwhelmed, so is your competitor. Make sense? But the second thing is that we have to realize is brand used to be this thing we got to dictate, right? Remember 30 years ago we got to tell you how to feel about our brand, shove it down our throat through advertising, through TV, through things like that. Now brand is a relationship that you and I get the opportunity to participate in actively. Think about that for a minute. Brand is not just who we say we are, it's who what? It's who they say we are. And who they say they are. And so it's this active relationship. How many of you are in a relationship of any kind that has lasted, friendship, marriage, whatever, that has lasted 10 years, 20 years? Does it take work? Has it always been sunshine and roses? Rainy days cause the sunny days to, happen, but you need both, right? Like the reality is relationships are tough. And the more meaningful a relationship is, the more we have to put into it. And this isn't about how much money we can spend. This isn't about how much technology we can throw at them and how many new quick offers we can do. It's the hard stuff. It's what we do when we suck. How many of you have a meaningful relationship in your life and you have let them down worse than you've let down a total stranger? And the rest of you are liars, right? We all have. You hurt the people you love the most, not because you intend to hurt them, but because they're the closest to you and we're all fallible. And our businesses are no different because our businesses are made up of what? Humans. And we sell stuff to who? Other humans. Technology does a lot of stuff, but last time I checked, except for in the stock market, technology doesn't buy shit. Right? So human beings are on both sides of this equation, and we have to remember that. Sanity check. The good news is our power is the power that we can leverage is our customer base. So I've met a lot of you over the last couple of days in different breakouts and around the lunch tables and things like that. And a common theme I heard from at least 3/4 of the people I sat down with was the culture of your institution was strong, which I find that to be very encouraging because I believe that the first customer in any equation is the employee, the team, right? Because we've all bought stuff from a company that treats their employees well, and we've all bought stuff from a company that doesn't. And usually the experience is a little better in the former than the latter, right? So we can look at our power center, which is our customer base, and we can find ways to not be victimized by Bill Gates' reality, which is right. Money is going to happen. Oxygen's necessary, so some form of money in banking. We need to be able to move money around the world to exist in the current economy that we have. And even when we traded goods back and forth with each other, there was a trade that had to happen for society to work and settle. And so it's not going away, but banks and institutions and credit unions may. So how many of you have done empathy mapping inside of your organization? Anyone know what that is? I feel like a McDonald's hamburger. None of you? How many of you know what it is? Yes, you have? Yeah, so journey mapping, persona development, empathy mapping, any of you done some form of that in your organization? Here's a tip. I'm gonna run through this quickly because I don't have any handheld mics, but I want you to get something that you can take home and just do and play. So this is a quick exercise. If you can imagine draw a grid on a piece of paper. That was not me doing Pope John, whatever. Dominus Dominus, you'll be all right. Right? Draw a grid, and on one side, so I'm going to point like this. On this corner, you will have think. On this corner, you will have feel. Down here, you'll have a box that says say, and over here, you'll have one that says do. So think, feel, say, do, in like a 4 grid. Everybody got that? And the exercise you'll run with your team, and do it with a cross-functional team. I know you're all in marketing. Do it with marketers, but go grab the guy from the basement in engineering and IT. Go grab someone who is not extroverted and whatever, and just grab a diverse group of mix. Grab males, grab females, grab people that don't associate with either. Grab whatever you can and try and put a little 4 or 5 person group together and put different color Post-its for each. So you might have pink for think, you might have green. It doesn't matter what color you use, right? That's irrelevant. This is just a simple workshop you can do with your team. And the first thing, so we'll do it a little bit here. I'm going to use Yuri and Becky again because they're up front and it's easy to hear and I can repeat what they say. So I want you guys to imagine this. I'm going to do it with both of you, one male, one female. $100,000, you just got $100,000 new cash. Someone gave it to you, you didn't know you had it, just got $100,000 okay? Just found that news out on the phone. What do you think? What's the thought? $100,000.
How am I going to spend it?
How much tax you got?
Okay, so 2 thoughts, right? So what I would do is I would do this at scale with 4 or 5 people, and I would say, they wouldn't say it out loud, I'd have them write it on a sheet of paper. Write down the top 2 or 3 thoughts in your head when I say, $100,000 new, yours. She said, how's she going to spend it? Pay attention to the words. This is why you want them to write it down. So I'd put that up here under think. He said, how much tax I got to pay? Right? Do you see a difference in how they think? And that's just 2 samples, right? So you do this with 4 or 5 people, you'll find interesting stuff. I did this with a corporation a couple weeks ago, and things came up like, where am I going to invest it? 2 people said, how do I turn it into $1 million? Right? And they kind of said it that way. They had exclamation points on their pink sheet, right? Somebody else said, how much tax am I going to get it? And so what happens is now you start to associate what goes through the mind of your customer. So now, how do you feel? $100,000. How do you feel? His word is awesome. What's your word? Amazing. You guys are just thinking of a word you would feel. If I said, here's $100,000 net new, and you didn't know you had it, how would you feel? So you write down the feelings. You map out all the different feelings. What would you do? And think about it, not what you should do. Think about what you'd honestly do. What's the first thing you would do? Here's $100,000. What would you do? Call my best friend. What'd you say? Dance. Okay. What would you do?
Pay loans.
Pay loans. So physically write out checks to other people. Do you guys get the exercise? This is empathy mapping. Why is this empathy mapping? Because I'm humanizing this. I'm not trying to figure out what to say to them to sell my shit. Pardon my French. I'm saying what they actually feel, think, do. What do you say? What do you say out loud? When you called your friend, so what do you say?
There would be swearing.
There would be swearing. What do you say?
A lot of swearing.
Okay, so there'd be a lot of swearing in a happy way. Now, what you want to do with empathy mapping is you want to run through different scenarios. $100,000 is an easy one, right? Because what would we want them to do as a bank, as a credit union? What do we want them to do with $100,000? Deposit it with us. Of course. Like, what do we want them to think? We want them to think our logo. What do we want them to feel? That's the best choice I can make. I feel safe. I feel excited. What do we want them to say? We want them to say, can I open an account with you today? What do we want them to do? Put the money in so then we can do our thing and push product down their throat. But that's not what they want, right? What they want is they want to call their best friend. What they want is they want to dance. What they think is, oh my God, what's my tax liability? What they think is, what am I going to spend it on? Not invest. So if we can understand what they think, feel, say, and do, we can start to understand what the micro moments are through that customer journey that they're going to have. We can understand what those moments of truth with our brand, meaning when they remember us, right? You guys know what a moment of truth is. It's all the little micro moments of, I lead up to, okay, I search for, new banks, or I search for the best interest rate, or one of the things I do is I go on Google, or I look on my mobile phone and read Dave Ramsey or whoever my favorite guru is and go, what do you do with $100,000? So that you're not an idiot, right? And then I go to Zara, or I go to H&M, or I go to wherever, and I go, well, it's $100,000. I mean, 10 wouldn't be that. I mean, that's only 10%, right? Pay myself first, I think that's how that goes. Go to the BMW dealership, whatever it is. And so those are exercises you want to do. You want empathy having with your customer will allow you to be a human talking to another human before you start figuring out how you're going to sell stuff, market stuff, or put things in the way. It also lets you look at the touch points along the way of how they would ever come into your branch, to your online website, to everything else, and realize, am I being relevant? Like if I know that when I talk to a CD customer, or I talk to, some kind of mortgage customer or whatever, that $100,000 is a down payment for a house, I can do that math, but have I thought about what it feels like? Maybe there's this amazing feeling, but inside there's also this trepidation, because maybe $100,000 is the largest check I've ever received at one lump sum time. Right? So as good as it feels, and as many happy cuss words as I'm doing, that's also a defense mechanism in a human, because we all have that number. I don't care how much money you have, there is a number, if I put a check in front of you, would freak you out a little bit. Right? It might be $1 million, might be 10 million, might be 20 grand. It doesn't matter. It's all relative. The point is that none of us are really being honest if that net new experience that's awesome doesn't also cause us to be a little bit apprehensive. So as a marketer, and as someone who's trying to create a customer experience that is a relationship that feels personal at scale, I want to gather that information, and I want to understand the words my people are using, my customers are using, across different demos. And I want to start to map into that. So people are more loyal to their need in the moment. You've seen that stat probably before. Number one thing we've got to do after we realize we're powerless, and that the power that we seek to control is actually just getting real with our customers, empathizing with them, is to be brutal. Brutal truth. Remember we talked about it before. We talked about the bad news is that you can't stop everything that's going to happen. Good enough's no longer good enough. You'll be dead as an institution. And here's something that'll sting a couple of you. So ready for the butts to pucker? Everybody sit up a little bit. Done? It's going to happen. Some of you in this room, I won't look at anyone. I'm going to look down. I'm just going to do this. Some of you in this room are 5 to 6 years away from retirement. And so no matter what you do at this conference, whatever you think, feel, say, what you actually will do is nothing. Because 5 years from now, you're gone. So what you hope is that by coming here, you'll get a bunch of information that you can put in your head, and then you can figure out a roadmap how not to get fired between now and 5 years, and leave it to someone else to have it be their problem. I've had people tell me it doesn't matter in 20 years because I'll be dead, thank God. Really? You fear change that much? That's silly. Human beings have created the world we live in today. It's a much better world to live today with all the news that you see in your feed. I love that stat that Dr. Berger gave us earlier. I was blown away that only 7% of word of mouth statistically is online. I own a couple of agency businesses. I would have never guessed that. I'm trying to figure out how I can reverse engineer that into a cool sales pitch. 7% today, but guess where it's going? I got to figure out how to reverse engineer that into something that sounds sexy, just like you. The reality is I was blown away by that stat. What I'm not blown away by is the same stats that show mortality rates are lower than ever, gun deaths are lower than ever, all these different bad diseases. We have more cures than we've ever had before. But how many of you actually feel that way? None of us. Because we have a mobile phone, and whether we're on Facebook or Twitter or none of them or not, we're inundated, aren't we? And we're inundated with the stuff that tells us it's going the opposite direction. That it's scarier than ever, that you can't take your kid to a park without worrying about something bad happening, that you can't leave them in school, right? If you have young children, I know, I feel this way, and if none of you do, a good portion of your customer base does. There's more fear and apprehension than ever before, but the data says we shouldn't be. So please don't retire on the job for the next 5 years. That's my call to action. Don't feel bad if that's who you are. That's a normal gut human reaction. I'm certainly not judging you. I've had it. But at the end of the day, the thing to do about it is to realize that talk is cheap. This is for the millennials in the room who understand emoticon versus English. So how do we transform our financial institution? We built something called the Experience Marketing Framework. We talked about pictures earlier, yes? And so there's a lot of ways you could build a picture for your organization. I won't pretend that this is the only and best one. I will say that it has worked really well for the people that we've worked with. It's worked really well for the companies that we've invested in, that we build from the ground up to solve this customer experience challenge, put the customer in the center of the business from day one, and then support that through a social business strategy, marketing technology, and customer experience journey that we feel like meets them where they are and allows us to go into white spaces like Method was talking about the other day, where you go into a crowded space and you just dominate because you do things more relevant to the customer and more efficient with using technology as the tool. So the Experience Marketing Framework is designed to put purpose, people, and process in a powerful configuration, and more importantly, what it's designed to do is give you all a common picture so that when I say refrigerator, i.e. customer experience, you see a triangle with 3 nodes and 3 layers, and when you start to speak that, so this is something you can totally customize. We're going to spend the next 28 minutes of my time with you showing you how you would do that, talking through each node just so you can start to do that, and then again, you can reach out to me and if you want to follow up at any level, we can talk about how to personalize it more. But the point of this isn't this one picture that you glean on. This is one picture that you can customize. Okay, so a purpose-focused strategy. How many of you are very clear that you have a purpose-focused strategy? You know why you guys get out of bed every morning, and when you look to your right and you look to your left, your colleagues have the same picture. Good. And it's not uncommon if it's a little fuzzy. The bigger the organization, the harder that is. The earlier stage of the company, maybe the smaller the company, usually the clearer that is, because there's a stated, purpose, mission, vision, values kind of thing that is probably propagated throughout the office. You don't have the broad scale where it's hard to propagate that and manage it on a day-to-day. But if you think you have one, that's great. That's a good starting point. Another way to energize the base is sit there and look at each other one day and say, okay, guys, the next 5 years is going to be the most exciting time in human history. I was listening to this guy. He had a really bright blue suit on, didn't have any hair. I think he was Walter White. And what he told me was, we need a common picture and a common purpose to go march. And so why do we all get out of bed every morning? Here's why I get out of bed. Because hopefully you don't get out of bed to take the check. There's always an element to that. None of us get out of bed to be broke. But if that's the only thing we're getting out of bed for at this organization, life is too short, my friends. There is more opportunity in the next 5 years than there has ever been in the history of commercial opportunity. Go do something else. Because the world needs you to go do something else. So if you can't get fired up every morning to go where you go right now, change. If you can, then be the light that everyone else, and harness that energy around you so that you guys can go dominate and take market share from the people who are asleep on the job waiting for retirement. Fair enough? So purpose-focused strategy is key. Human-centric tactics, we talked about that. Does it feel better to buy from someone who thinks you're a human? Yeah, right? We've all had that experience on customer service. We call in and we're expecting the what? We're like, oh, God, I hate this. Please don't put me through to that town where Tim talks to me and reads off a script. Right? And then you get someone who's a human on the other side, and it's actually your fault. Like I had one with Southwest where it was my fault. It was Thanksgiving. I didn't realize, because I fly Southwest all the time, but mostly out here. I didn't realize on the East Coast, they'll have 2 flights leaving Boston Airport at the same time, but they don't go through the same city. Didn't know that, because I never had that option before. So I book a flight for my wife and son, 6:50 in the morning, going home to Arizona. I booked the same flight using points on my account, 6:50 in the morning, going to Arizona. Day before we leave, Friday after Thanksgiving, I go to log in. Midway, I could have swore we were going through BWI. Oops. Chris was going through BWI. My family was going through Midway. So I call Southwest and I'm going, it's Friday after Thanksgiving. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We leave at 6:50 Saturday morning. This is going to be expensive. And I'm familiar. I'm an A-list member, so I'm familiar with all the great Southwest, no change fees, all that stuff. But this is like, come on, Chris, you screwed this one up. And I'm not really afraid of Southwest. Who am I afraid of? Yeah. She's a lovely woman, but, come on, she can't handle idiocy. God bless her. So I call up, and long story longer, they handle it. And my approach was kind of like, I was thinking about, man, I should lie. Like, you guys suck, man. Like, $650, I booked this. I don't know why I'm going. And I'm like, but that's not me. That's not my personality, because I've been catching those bullets for 20 years. So I just try and save other people. And so I called up and I said, I was like, listen, I think I screwed up, but I didn't mean to. I thought we were going through whatever we were going through. And she goes, okay, well, you don't have enough points to cover the change. And I'm like, yeah, how much is it going to be? Because I really, like, if there's any way. This is like a one-time thing. I'm an A-list person. And I start to go into my woe is me. I'm like so loyal. I love you guys. You walk on water, because I do think that. And I'm like, I'm starting to go into that. And I am not 18 seconds into my like sales pitch to get her to do me a favor. And she goes, it's all handled, Mr. Snook. And I'm like, what's handled? She's like, I got the thing covered. You're going through midway with your wife and son. Anything else I can do for you? And I'm like, you just saved me like a 30-minute sales pitch. She goes, yes, I got to take care of other customers now. Would you be fine if I hung up? And I was like, now I get to be the hero to my wife. I'm like, listen, honey, somehow Southwest totally screwed up our flights. They had me going through Baltimore. They had you and Beckett going through, but listen, I called up. I love this company. They totally handled it. It was their fault. So, I mean, of course they did. And now she's going to watch this video and know that wasn't true. All right. And data. We got to iterate off of data. So here's the big picture. You saw the top level. There's 3 layers. The easiest way to think about these layers is one layer generates our insights. We get insights in a lot of different ways, right? We all have the shower insight, but then we have data-driven insights and actionable insights. These are the buzzwords if you've been to one or more of these conferences, you've heard these things. And so our data governance and how we architect our streams, and some of you may have seen in the mobile app, I put a quote up the other day that was one of the core values of one of the agencies that we operate, that says, do not value what you measure what you value. And so when you measure what you value, you have the metrics in there that actually drive the end result you are trying to look for with your customer, the relationship you want to build, products you want to sell. And when you do that, you gain insights from that. Things that you wouldn't have otherwise known, because you can't, as a human, calculate them fast enough. But a machine can do it and serve it up. And then as a human, you can figure out how to interpret that, put it into a human design, and execute. So the strategy layer will give you the opportunity to go, here's where we're going. Here's the vision. And then it'll give you the nodes you need to cover on how you're going to actually do that. And how you're going to actually do that means you prioritize that schedule against the budget, right? And calibrate it to a scope with people, process, all the things you can do. And you prioritize it to the major business objectives. So we'll talk about that in a second. And then success is where you're executing and you're really optimizing for reliability. So if you haven't read Jean Bliss's stuff, she's great. CustomerBliss.com is her website. She's another friend, and she's kind of like the godmother of customer experience. I've learned a lot from her. She talks about the 2 commitments an organization must have are a commitment to reliability and innovation around their customer experience. So reliability is what we do day in, day out. It's the things that work, right? It's not about disrupting our whole operation because someone told us we needed a better mobile app or someone told us we needed to be digital. It's going, what works? And if what works right now is we're lending, 80% of our portfolio is to agriculture businesses, and that farmer comes in and they interact with us a certain way, and that works, and it has nothing to do with something that has a chip in it, okay, well then let's optimize the reliability around that. But then as we're collecting data on those transactions, on those loan rates, on those default rates, and all that other interesting stuff, and on those upsells and what products they move into, then let's figure out how we can innovate our customer experience to not lose that aspect that already works, that's reliable, and that farmer trusts, but that gets us more farmers that maybe don't operate that way, that are maybe 10, 20 years younger, right, that we want for the next 20 years of our organization. So innovation and reliability need a framework because, again, we've talked a lot about relationships. I believe everything in business is a relationship. I love those people that say, this isn't personal. It's what? Yeah, right. I'm an entrepreneur, so maybe I'm different. Anyone who's an entrepreneur in the room or who just has a pulse, I think it's an expression. I didn't want to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know that. I wasn't raised to be an entrepreneur. There's been nights and weekends where I've been bankrupt and broke and upside down and sued where I'm going, why did I choose this life? Right? It's an expression of creativity. It's an outward thing. For me, it's not a choice. It's a DNA level thing that I've chosen to get really good at. But the point is that when we think about, these two things, relationships are personal, and business to me is personal because it's my product, it's my brand, it's my investment. It's me saying, I think you deserve to put your money with me, right? Versus them, because I'm going to take better care of you. I'm going to give you a better service, a product, a solution. That's trust. That's asking someone to trade one of their most precious assets that they traded time for, the only asset you and I can't get back, to create, and then I'm going to not waste it. That's what we do as business people. So to me, that's very personal. And what happens in a lot of times is we try and create reliability and we try and create innovation in the same plane. And it's impossible to do that. So in the Experience Marketing Framework, we talk about it. It's not in the slide deck, but you can see it in the book. And I have a special gift for everybody, so don't worry about that. But you want them to be interlocked. So I'm going to put this down for a second. Bucky Fuller. Anybody ever read Buckminster Fuller? Yeah, a couple. All right. People that are not born in 1990 know that. So Bucky Fuller talks about two interlocking loops, and he talks about love as a relationship. He says the reason why you want to have two interlocking loops is because people can operate at different speeds when they're going this way and never come pulled apart. If we're operating on the same track and one of us is going slower, one gets run over. And how many of you have tried to innovate inside your organization and feel like you got run over by process? Or vice versa. The innovative people are coming. Shit, let's hide. Right? So this will prevent that. Your innovators can operate in a vertical, horizontal, or a vertical plane, and your operators can operate in a horizontal one, and the framework will give you a way to know how to deploy things from the vertical plane into the horizontal to test and iterate and refine. So here we go, insights layer. Customers, competitors, and forces. Two of these things you don't control, one you do. So you can do empathy mapping, you do a lot of personal workshops on persona development, journey maps, and you can figure out what your customer needs are. You're not selling to wants, you're selling to needs. They get packaged up like wants and prioritized as wants, but in the banking world, I think you're not selling to wants. If anything, you're selling against wants. So you want to understand what your customer needs are. You want to look at what your competitors are doing for two reasons. Not to just, I believe we all compete with ourselves, but at the end of the day, we can learn a lot. I loved what Eric said the other day about steal my stuff so that I can steal it back from you when you iterate. Right? We should all be thinking that way. So hopefully that's what you've been doing around these lunch tables this weekend and this whatever day it is. I never know what day it is. So competitors, you want to look at the touch points in that journey and think about where your competition is kicking your butt and where they're vulnerable. So maybe they're better at local search. Maybe their landing pages are much better from a UI standpoint, and their conversion rates on whatever product kick you in the butt, and you're going, man, if we had something like that, we would be dialed in. But maybe where they fall down is where you're stronger, right? Maybe they fall down with the farmer across the desk in the branch. Maybe that's a strength. And so you want to look at your touch points in your journey, all the different things that go from being aware that I have a need, called I just got $100,000, I got to figure out what to do with it, through I am now a loyal customer of your institution. And you want to look at all those touch points and start to rank them against your competitors and say, where, if we move the needle on this touch point, do we get this delta of growth? Because you might only need to improve 5% on one touch point to get 30% growth on the end of it, whereas you could invest 50% because it's so backwards and you're so in the dark ages, you go fix that one, but you only really see a yield of this because the person never gets there. Because some touch point over here, 90% of the traffic left you and never saw you. So you fix this one over here thinking, oh, well, look, we got the best mobile app ever, and you never got discovered back here at touch point 2 or 3 before they chose who they were going to work with. So that's what you want to look at when you're looking at the competitors thing. You want to get a cross-functional team of FinOps, marketing, customer service in that dialogue with you. Lots of questions you can ask that are in there. And you now compete, as most of you know, with expectations that are not in your control. If you take an Uber in this town, right, you realize what it's like to have frictionless checkout. If you buy something from Amazon and it ships to your door for free 2 hours later like it does to me in Arizona, it's pretty hard to compete with that as an expectation when you're a bank and there's or a credit union, and there's a day or two wait for something that has to go through compliance or whatever, right? So you can't compete with that. But you can be aware of it, and you can try and augment against it with some other touch point that you highlight or enable, and just realize that you're competing with things that you never had to compete with before. Forces are the thing I want you to think about. What are some external forces that could impact your business? What? So technology forces. What are some other ones? Economic forces. Macroeconomic changes can impact, good or bad, right? Fed rates go up, something happens. Fed rates go down, something happens. In both cases, the force creates a trajectory for one product line or another going away, right? It gives you an opportunity, but you got to know, you want to try and anticipate what those forces are. Regulatory forces, yes, certainly in your business. But what about other forces that maybe you haven't thought about? Edelman's Global Trust Barometer is a force you would be aware of. Basically, this is saying we don't trust each other. Trust is in a crisis as of 2017. USA is doing really good. We're leading. Where's Jamaica? Jamaica on there? I think Jamaica's doing okay, Mom. They still trust each other down there. So as trust is one of these forces that we have to now be aware of can impact our business. Again, this all goes back to the common thing I'm going to beat over your head is humanizing yourself, right? Just think about you. You're a customer. Forget where you work. Forget what you're trying to sell. Just think about how you buy stuff. Think about what feels good today for you. That's a great place to start because although we're one data point, we scale. And if we don't scale with our individual quirks and needs and wants, like I may think about things differently than you do, we scale at least in the fact that when we get human with ourselves, we go, shit, I wouldn't buy that. I wouldn't watch or share that video. I wouldn't do what you are asking me to do. It makes sense. I wouldn't do it. Follow? Because we can over-architect and over-design these things in our organization. And especially when we're being told digitally transform. It gets real fun to go out and talk to all of our SaaS technology partners and say, well, what do you got for me? Because they'll over-engineer the snot out of it. And then you'll have no one to know how to use it internally. And so then you'll go hire a consultancy to go help you implement it. And they'll tell you then that you didn't need to buy half of it. And you'll be paying them to help you figure out the half you do want to keep. And so start simpler. So Edelman Trust Survey's got some interesting stuff. Vision layer, now we're into strategy, aligning around needs, prioritizing to a schedule, calibrating a scope. Thing to pay attention to here, because we're flying through the high-level version of this, is you now have aligned your teams around what does our business make decisions around. Hopefully what you're going to come out with from this conference or from this talk at least is our business needs to make decisions around the impact it has on the customer. Customer one, our employee. Customer two, the end user. If you're making decisions based on anything else, you're screwing up. I'm not saying profits aren't important. They're more important than anything except for the customer. You can't run a business without cash. You can't run a business without a disciplined P&L. But disciplined P&Ls don't build brand loyalty. So you've got to find a way to put the customer in the center of your decision making, not just in the marketing department, but from the C-suite down. And if you can't get the CEO to buy into it, you're going to have trouble. But the CEO is going to want data. So you have to give the CEO and the CFO what they want so that they can give you what you need, which is their buy-in. So don't try and baffle them with all the cool marketing BS. They don't care. They want to understand how it's going to impact shareholder value. They want to understand how it's going to impact the P&L, CapEx, all those things. So package it that way for them. But they also want to run a company that's successful, that's kicking butt, and that's getting great accolades, and not one that's being blasted around Facebook as the devil, right? They don't want to be United. They want to be Southwest. Poor United. Poor Continental, actually. Touch points and scope. So you know what touch points are. Scope is really realizing that we have to do more with less. We have more demands than ever. We got less money to do it, less time, and less people. And even if we had enough people and enough time and enough money, we have less information on how to do it because it's changing rapidly. So we're doing less with more. And so fine, great, brutal truth. What do we have? What can we lever? How resource parsimonious can you be? It's a big word for me, state school kid. Hope I use that right. I think it means to be frugal and very efficient with our capital outlay and our time outlay. So scope is, if my budget's $1 million a year, if it's $10 million a year, how am I going to use this framework to prioritize which 2 or 3 touch points we can actually go tackle that are going to give us the lift at the end of the journey that's going to move our needle? And then focus only on that. And don't worry about if you have a Facebook page, right? And 15 of your customer or competitors do. They're just getting their ass to nowhere. Goals. Goals are easy to come up with a lot of times. Most of you have a three-pronged approach. Here's what we're going to do in 2017. Guys, ready? Break. But do those align with the customer needs, the customer goals? Maybe they do, but you want to map to that. You want to know they do. So if one of your goals is we got to increase profit margin by 20% and grow the top line by X, fine. Like, you don't have to change that goal. How can we do that in a way that solves the number one need we identified at the insights layer about the customer's journey, what they need? So how can we go do that, giving the customer what they need, number one? And if the 3 goals of your business that then get handed to marketing to go drive map to the 3 needs of that customer because you've empathized with that customer, good. Check the box. You can move on to the next number. So, talked about scope. Now we're at execution. Data-fed iterations, iterating in real time. How many of you are implementing new technology at present or in the research, like you're evaluating it? How many of you recently did it, like within the last 12 months, and now you're operating with that? Okay, somebody tell me what your biggest question is. Somebody give me some guidance on how to contextualize this part, because we're going to wrap up. Who's implementing right now? What's your biggest question about what to pick or whatever? Yes.
One of our biggest questions on one of the future choices we have to make is, do we have the culture that we're going to need to stay up to speed with a rapid release development cycle?
Gotcha. So the question was, to repeat it for those who don't have the mic, do we have the culture that we need to stay with this implementation as we continue to iterate over time? Right? Anybody have a similar question? That's a great question to ask, though, because it forces you to figure out what that culture would even be. Right? So that's what we call an open-ended question that is a little bit scary, but at the same time, like, you have to implement. But by asking that question, immediately everyone else gets to sort themselves. They get to say, yes, I want to be part of the culture that can be a constant learning environment, continue to understand where the market's going and how we're going to compete and how we're going to keep our soul and at the same time leverage technology. I'm up for that game. I don't know what to do yet, but I'm in. I'm in. You need help researching what we should go study, what conferences we should go do, which books we should all go read? I'm in. Versus, I don't know, that's not us. We've been doing this for 100 years. Why do we got to change? Right? Like, our people are farmers. Our people are this. Our people are that. Our people don't do this. We don't sell to millennials or whatever. You just want to sort. So that's a great question. What's another question that someone has that maybe just did implement? One more? Yes?
Well, it's getting your staff to use the product so they can actually sell it better, so that they have to believe in it. So if they're not believing in it, they're not going to sell it.
Biggest challenge. How many of you have staff that use stuff that's not approved? CRMs, things like that. And maybe it's not as prevalent in the banking business, but in most industries that I look at, they've implemented some kind of new design around marketing technology and automation, and they have salespeople or broker. In your guys' world, it would be agents and brokers out there, especially in the mortgage or lending space, that are using Twilio or some other thing because it's sexier and it's easier. Totally not secure, totally not corporate approved, totally not on brand, but it's their mobile phone and that's what they like. And so part of the challenge that a lot of you face is, and what I would say is, as you're looking at what data architecture to put in place, a fair question to ask the company you're buying it from and the people implementing it with you is, how do I make sure that whatever tool I pick, I can get buy-in from, the rank and file, the field, the people utilizing it. Because my CTO will use it, my CIO will use it, my whatever will use it, but I got 1,000 brokers out there in the field, or I've got 50 branch managers that think they like this better because they can print a cool chart off of it, or they can tweet to each other in Slack or whatever it is. So start to ask what other brands are doing. What are they doing to solve this problem? Can you put a Slack integration or something in there that's got that frictionless kind of data flow back and forth, but that I can somehow control and still keep as part of my stack? So these are questions that you didn't have to ask them as much back in the days of legacy software and on-site stuff. But in the world of cloud, you do, because every startup is trying to go after Oracle and everybody else until they get acquired by them. And so they'll have a better UI, they'll have a better UX, they'll have a sexier product, they'll have a free download. They'll segment to certain verticals like banking or industry because they know they can get rapid adoption. And so you're competing with them not from a direct standpoint, but you're competing them from a culture standpoint and from a mindshare standpoint, because once someone has a habit, it's hard to break. So as you design these things, do your best to ask those questions up front. But I think the other thing comes back to culture is you have to get buy-in. You have to start to propagate that the customer is our most important asset. It's not deposits on account. Those deposits on account come from a human being that's our customer. They are our most important asset. Every decision we make, from the technologies we implement to the ones we don't, is based on how it's going to impact our customer, long-term and short-term. And all we're asking, if you work here, Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. Such-and-such, is that you can buy into that. If you buy into that, we're going to treat you better than anybody else does, we believe. We're going to care about you. We're going to invest in you this way. We've got these perks and benefits. We're going to pay you the best wage we can. But what we need is we need you to give a crap. And we need you to toe the line. But what we're going to give you in return is we're going to be an ever-evolving organization. We are going to continually figure out the ways to optimize reliability within our current customer experience and stay true to our legacy of XYZ years of being in business. And at the same time, we're going to find ways to be cutting edge without divorcing ourselves of who we are. That's the game you're playing. All right, wrapping up. Last couple minutes. Where's my slides? Keep looking the wrong way. All right, design thinking is a great thing. Do some reading around design thinking. I don't have time to get into it in depth here. I'm doing a reprise of this at 2:45. If you haven't figured out by now, I don't have a script. So if you come back, it probably won't be the same presentation if you want more. I won't be wearing a suit then either. I like to change it up so it looks like a new guy. It's an A/B test I'm doing today. Does the suit rank higher, or does the jeans and T-shirt go better? And we'll go with data-fed iteration. Design thinking says what's feasible, what's viable, and what's desirable, right? And the sweet spot of any decision you make and execute and start to implement should be what's feasible to you, what's viable, and then ultimately what's desirable by your end user. So design thinking is a great skill to develop. You've humanized your tactics. We've talked about Biggie's new song. Measure what you value is the key, right? Valuing what's measured is not. So thank you, Biggie. Rest in peace. Anyone who wants one, connect to me on LinkedIn at Chris J. Snook. Send me your email. Drop me a business card when you're done here. I'll send you a Kindle version of Digital Sense. Yuri's got a physical copy. I'd be honored if you bought it. But if you don't, I'll send it to you if you want it. If you've already bought it on Kindle, like I bought Dr. Berger's book back there in the back of the room, thank you for being digitally sensified. Don't feel offended now that I'm giving it to you for free. Give it away. And 5 takeaways, last 60 seconds. If you get the book, read it. It does you no good on a shelf. It's the last chance. You don't have much more time to put the customer in the center of your business. And this is not just about banking or financial institutions. This is every business. But this is it. There is no this isn't the 80s where we said robots are going to take our jobs and then it didn't happen. That was the penny at 2.48 cents. This is now the penny at 28 days. Everybody understand that? So good for you for investing time in this week to be here. Thanks for having me out. The EMF, the Experience Marketing Framework, is something you can customize. I'd love to help you in any way I can. Message me, blog me, whatever. I'll share with you best practices offline. And then the opposite of breaking bad is making good. So thank you for having me out. It's been my pleasure, and I'll be around for questions the rest of the day. See you at 2:45 if you come back.